Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of my How to Aquascape series, all about Hardscape on this one. If you haven't seen part 1, check that out. It's all about the equipment that we've used here on this stunning Awase Escaper Line 90. All the equipment here pretty much from Awase, the lighting, the tank, the cabinet, the filtration, the substrate system, liquid fertilisers, etc. all kindly donated by Awase, so thank you to them. So Hardscape, what is it? Why do we use it? How do we use it? What should we look out for? We'll discuss all of this using my Escaper Line 90 Aquascape as an example, and I'll talk you through exactly how I created this, arguably one of my finest hardscape compositions ever in my 25 years in this hobby. So hardscape is normally wood or rocks positioned in an aquarium to create something beautiful. I like to think of hardscape as like a skeleton in a human being. It's like the framework in which everything else is built around. You know, the hardscape offers opportunity to attach plants. It offers obviously visual impact through the material itself. And we can use several different guidelines in order to create a beautiful hardscape. I'll go through some common kind of beginner mistakes potentially that some of you may experience. I think one of the biggest ones with hardscaping is not choosing the appropriate pieces to start with, whether they're not big enough or they're not positioned in an effective way. Biggest tip I could suggest is visit an aquarium shop with a good hardscape selection. Hopefully they've got a scaping dojo or a sandpit where you can position your hardscape. They've got a ruler or a tape measure so you can actually measure out the footprint of your aquarium size, and then you can ensure that those hardscape pieces fit appropriately. And also if the aquarium shop staff are skilled, they can also give you some assistance in their hardscape composition and give you some ideas, so don't be afraid to experiment. You can also get hardscape, you can collect it from outside, but do bear in mind any laws, you know, collecting from private land, etc. might be an issue. And also bear in mind the safety aspect, so some naturally found hardscape materials might not be suitable for the aquarium. Some rocks, for instance, may dissolve very quickly and really change the water parameters. Some woods may leach nasty chemicals. So I'd always generally recommend sourcing hardscape materials from a dedicated aquarium store. In my mind, there's kind of 3 basic ways that you can compose your hardscape when you're using a wood and rocks. Using rocks on their own is a different story. That's one for another video. Iwagumi, just rocks on their own, it's almost a different art form completely. So today we're just going to really talk about the wood and rock combination. So the 3 main kind of compositions you can go for, starting off with the triangle. This is my favourite, naturally draws the eye from left to right, or you could have it sloping the other way from right to left. And I've chosen to do left to right because the open space is here and I sit here when I'm viewing the aquariums, so it makes sense to have the scape going off into the distance when you're looking at it from this angle. And in fact, when you do see it from this angle, it's another beautiful aquascape in its own right, really, sloping down this way. So that's the triangle composition. You also have island composition, or basically have the large hardscape mass towards the centre of the aquarium, and then, you know, shorter plants or open areas around the perimeter of that hardscape. And the other option is to have a concave, so like a U shape, which is what I'm using in my Highline 400 here. So they're the 3 kind of main compositional guidelines you can use. When you're actually positioning the hardscape to start with, we tend to do it in a dry aquarium, so either a brand new aquarium or you've stripped your aquarium down and rehomed your fish, etc. Start off with a dry aquarium. It's just much easier, it's less messy, and you can tinker around with it to your heart's content until you get that final hardscape design that you're really happy with. Speaking of which, I think one of the reasons this is such a strong hardscape layout is because it took me 2 months to create, believe it or not. It wasn't 2 months of 8 hours a day constantly working on it. Sometimes it was just 30 seconds or a minute. But I would constantly observe it and I'd think, how can I make that look any better? How can I make it more balanced? Can I add more detail, more texture? And over the days and the weeks, you know, you gradually, you know, refining this hardscape until you're eventually really happy with it. And during that time, you can really give some thought to your plant choice, future fish choice, etc. So I think it's just an important lesson, just to take your time with your hardscape. Don't rush it. I've, over the years, always tend to have rushed my hardscape, you know, done it in half an hour, in a workshop, done it in a few minutes. But it's only when you can really observe what you're doing over the long term that you can really kind of connect with the hardscape composition and really enjoy it. So take your time, don't rush it. It's a hobby, it's designed to be relaxing, it's for you and your time only. Forget about any distractions maybe, put some AirPods in or have a cup of tea or a glass of wine and just enjoy the process. That's what we're here for, isn't it? You know, too much stress around. We can remedy that with aquascaping, I think. So how did I actually create this aquascape? Well, in part one of this video series, the second half of the video was cinematic of me creating the hardscape, but I'll just talk you through that process now. So I always start off with the biggest, most bold pieces of wood. Then I just work my way down in size. And as I get towards the end of the process, we're just really refining those details. The wood here was actually originally used in aquarium gardens as part of their Aquascape of 1500 nature aquarium display, and it was stripped down and they sold off all of the hardscape. So I'm using probably around half of it in here with some extra bits and bobs as well. It obviously had been pre-soaked, and all of the tannins would have been released during that process, so actually it's quite handy to use second-hand hardscape, ensuring it's obviously clean and no algae on it, etc. But that means the tannin leaching, which you can get with brand new wood, isn't really so prominent. If you do get a lot of tannin leaching, there's a couple of things you can do. The number one thing is big water changes, just dilute those tannins. And you can also supplement the filtration with some chemical media, such as activated carbon or Seachem Purigen. Different woods will leach different amounts of tannins. It's just one of those things you're not really going to know until you get the water in there. So going back to the actual creation, I use I think 3 or 4 quite old pieces here, and then gradually work my way down in size. So the biggest pieces is like a generic driftwood, and then the smaller branches is manzanita, and then the tiny little twiggy branches here, I can't remember the name of it, but I bought like a big chunk of twiggy branches, and I split it up into probably 8 or 9 smaller pieces here. And I've tried to position all of the pieces together so it looks coherent. It's obviously a natural triangle position, deliberately position the rocks, etc. underneath the wood, so it just looks as natural as possible. The great thing about hardscape design, it's like almost like a framework, like a matrix, and it offers so much opportunity to add our epiphytes or mosses. We'll talk about plants in a future video, but I'll just run through a few of them now. We've got Riccardia camidrifolia, we've got Anubias minicoin, there's a couple of different species of moss. The other plants in here, got Cyperus helferi, several species of Eleocharis, including Bontidavensis, which is the tall one, and Juncus repens. So very simple plant plan really. I was considering not using any kind of round textures. I was just going to use grassy textures and moss, but I had some spare minicoin that I propagated from my low-tech tank, and I've just put tiny individual rhizomes kind of scattered almost randomly over the wood, and hopefully it will grow in the long term. It's going to take months, probably 6 to 12 months to be fully mature. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting journey. Going back to the hardscape in here, we've talked about the wood. I used JBL Haru glue. We do a clear version, but I used the black version. You can see little blobs of it here and there. I used that to glue the big bits of wood to the stones to stop it from floating, just in case. And then I also used some glue to attach the manzanita and the little tiny branches as well. So the idea is when we do fill up with water, we're not going to get any floaters, which is always a bit of a drama. The substrate at the front here is a decorative gravel and sand. It's a combination of a kind of natural sand from Hugo Kamishi, which is a UK brand, Grain size is about 2 to 3 millimeters. It's just like an off-white grey colour, very natural, and it really suits the Siriu stone here, or the Ryu stone, or mini landscape rock, just different names for the same product. And then in the background we've got Aquascape soil. I think I used 2 bags altogether, and I've gone quite deep, sloping it quite deeply, so there's plenty of anchorage for those plants as well, and plenty of nutrients. Hardscape soil, proven performer. I've used it in a dozen or so aquascapes now. It works absolutely brilliantly. Not too high in nutrients, so you don't tend to get that huge ammonia spike that you can get with Amazonia. I'm really proud of it. I really love it, and I'm really excited to see this one grow in and share the journey with you. Let me know in the comments, what's your favourite hardscape material that you've used recently, and is there any other materials that you haven't used that you want to? I mean, I love Hakai stones, which Takashi Amano is one of his favourite rocks. Quite hard to get hold of, very expensive, but very beautiful. I'd love to have a go with that with Iwagumi at some point. That is the hardscape in a nutshell, guys. There's so much to talk about with hardscape. There's infinite combinations. If you think about the aquarium space as a blank canvas, 3-dimensional canvas, and the hardscape is part of the paint, and it's up to you to paint the most pretty picture you can with your hardscape. Thinking about 3 dimensions, thinking about sense of depth, thinking about textures, and finally thinking about how the plants are going to impact the overall impression with the hardscape. The hardscape and the plants have like a relationship, you know, and sometimes you have to thin out the plants considerably, otherwise they'll just grow over the hardscape and you'll lose that beautiful definition. But maybe you want that, and that's the beauty of this hobby. There is no right answer. It's up to you. You're the creator, you're the artist, the hobbyist, and that's the joy. You know, there are no rules. There are guidelines, but it's up to you. You know, and just enjoy the process. Take your time. Thanks for watching. Take care, and see you in the next one. What should the next one be? Episode 3, part 3. So we've done equipment so far. We've done hardscape. Maybe Substrate would be a good one. Let me know. Take care, and see you in the next one. Cheerio.